the Bears, shuffling through, shuffling on down. Doing it for you. We're so bad, we know we're good. Blowing your mind like we knew we would.
We are here talking about the NFC North. Brian, the Chicago Bears, not a very good team in 2024.
No, sir, they were not very good. They went 5-12, not overly impressive. I I do not think it was their quarterback play. I actually am very high on Caleb Williams. I actually picked him up last year in fantasy football for a bit until I figured out their line was not worth having at all. So hopefully they made some vast improvements on that, and he will not be running for his life, and he will actually show us this year what he's truly capable of, and I think he will. I think it's going to be a good season for him, and a good season for the Bears. Uh, what did you have on that team?
Well, I mean, you said not a very good team. That's almost an understatement. You're talking about a 27th ranked defense, which is already pretty bad. But then when you combine that with the 32nd ranked offense, you're not going to get very many wins. And the fact that they had 5 wins last season compared to a team like the Browns that actually had better offensive and defensive rankings, but didn't have 5 wins to show for it, kind of shows you the potential of this team. And Chicago has made a lot of moves. They had a lot of money to spend, and they did exactly what you want a 5-12 team to do. They got their quarterback in place. They've got an exciting young core of talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And then they had a bunch of money to spend. So what do? They went and got the hottest head coaching candidate they could in Ben Johnson coming over. He was previously the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions. And then you basically said, what do you need to make this a winning football team? And whatever he said, they spent. And so we're going to get into a lot of those moves. But a couple of departures, a couple guys won't be back. That's not necessarily a bad thing because I feel like they did a good job of replacing everybody that they don't have coming back, probably with better talent. So one name is going to be wide receiver Keenan Allen. He was a big part of their receiving group last year. I think he was second most in targets on the team behind only DJ Moore, ahead of Roma Dunze. All three of those guys had triple digits in targets. So you're talking about vacating a lot in that. He still remains unsigned. He's a wide receiver that's over 30 years old. These things happen. And then notably, they lost 5 offensive linemen, the most notable of which was Tevin Jenkins. We talked about him in the Cleveland video. He is now a Brown. But if you look at this offensive line and what they did last year, the amount of sacks of Caleb Williams that they gave up, you almost wanted to start all over with the offensive line because they were not a redeemable group. If you look at 2024, look at the numbers, look at the tape, they were not good. But then you get to free agency. They had the money to spend and they spent it. So first name off the list for me is Drew Dahlman, offensive center, formerly the Atlanta Falcons. This is somebody that we're very familiar with. He gets a 3-year, $42 million deal. Would have loved to have kept him in Atlanta. We just didn't have the money to pay him like what he commanded on that market. They ended up bringing another Atlanta Falcon in Grady Jarrett. But talking about this offensive line, offensive guard Joe Thuney, they traded for him from Kansas City. They give him a 2-year, $35 million extension. Jonah Jackson, they trade for him from the Los Angeles Rams. They also extend him through the 2027 year. This is going to be a completely remade offensive line from what you saw last year. And I think that that's going to basically show dividends of improvement for Caleb Williams. I mentioned Grady Jarrett coming over, offensive line. He also gets a 3-year deal, $43.5 million. And then Deo Odeyingbo, an edge player from the Indianapolis Colts, he gets 3 years, $48 million. Re-signing, big name. They brought back a few guys on some smaller deals, but quarterback Kyler Gordon, 3 years, $40 million. Like I said, they're sending out multi-year deals, big-time money, dollar signs. Anybody that showed a promise of a heartbeat last year, they brought him in. Anybody that they didn't feel like fit the vision for Ben Johnson, they're out of town and already replaced. So going into the draft, I already felt like they did a really good job in addressing some of their biggest needs, and it freed them up to just add top-tier talent in the draft. But just as far as these signings go, I mean, how do you feel like they did as far as their spending spree goes?
Well, I think as just like you said, I think they did very well. They definitely needed to revamp that offensive line. because it was terrible. I'm not saying the players were terrible. They could probably go somewhere else and find good homes, but collectively they were a terrible offensive line. And unfortunately, Caleb Williams paid the price being a young rookie quarterback and, just not, he was just fearful of his life. And that's no way to be. Roma Dunze, I like him. I think he's a great receiver. I think his potential this year is just going to be astronomical. It's going to be amazing to watch this team grow, develop, win games. I'm happy for their fans. I grew up in the era with the, 80s Bears where you had, the refrigerator Perry and he was as would get in there as fullback, and oh my lord, that was just great. They made that terrible music video. If you haven't seen it, go look that up on YouTube. I'm sure it's out there. It was so bad, but it showed a lot of fun. It showed a team having a lot of fun, and that's kind of what happens when you win Super Bowls and you have a collective group that is really good. And I'm thinking this year is probably going to be some of that. Do I predict them going to the Super Bowl? Absolutely not. But I think they do have that fun. I think they do have a great group of guys, and they could prove me wrong. They could, um, went out in the NFC and kind of, you know, that's them. I wish them well, but I think they're going to be a really good, fun football team to watch this year.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot overstate how important the change at head coach is going to be for them. I feel like if you took last year's team as bad as it was and you just put Ben Johnson in the place of the coaches that were there before, you're not looking at a 5-win team. You might be looking at a 7 or 8-win team just because I feel like he could fix stuff that was schematically wrong with them just that quick. Then when you start looking at the money that they had to spend, the moves that they've made, talking about the free agency, fixing the offensive line, it is not hard to envision a year where they have a double digit number of wins and are pushing to win this division.
Sure.
Obviously, we've been doing this series for a while now at this point where we are going each week as a different division. I don't want to give away a future video, but I don't think the Detroit Lions are winning 15 games again like they did last year. I don't think they're going to walk into a number one seed. This division had 3 playoff teams in it. And honestly, I know it sounds crazy. This could be the first division that has all 4 teams make the playoffs because all 4 teams are that good. And the Chicago Bears are going to take a giant leap forward this year. And a lot of that, it started in free agency and those names that we've already brought up, but it continued on with the draft picks. And as Ben Johnson puts his stamp on this team, you're going to see that transformation. I talk about Keenan Allen leaving his 120 plus targets, walking out the door with him. Yes, I think Roma Dunze gets a lot of those, and I'm with you. If you guys have been a part of this channel for a while, you've seen the sophomore surges videos that we put out. Roma Dunze is somebody that I am extremely high on. I think that he's somebody that you're going to want on your fantasy football teams. I think he's somebody that you're going to want to watch in real life. If you could catch a Chicago Bears game, do it because the kid is electric. He is actually going to be a very good, I think a very imposing force for a long time. But you don't have to get too deep in the draft before you see that they're not just relying on Roma Dunze taking a step forward. They're surrounding him with even more talent. Obviously, DJ Moore is still there as well. But a top 10 pick, a lot of people wondered, were they going to be the ones to take Ashton Genty? If Genty goes off the board, and we know that he did to the Raiders, do they take the next running back? Are they a Travion Henderson or an Amarian Hampton destination? No, they took another tight end in Colston Loveland. They actually took him over Tyler Warren, who a lot of people thought was the unquestioned tight end one. I heard going into the draft that Colston Loveland was actually the tight end one on a number of teams' boards, and obviously Chicago was one of those teams. They've got Cole Kmet there still. He's going to be a very good all-around tight end. Colston Loveland does not have to be relied upon as the number one tight end right away. He's going to get a lot of good looks and grow with this offense. Round 2, Luther Burden. Should have been a first-round pick. Not sure why he wasn't. If you go back and look at his tape 2 seasons ago, he's a top 10 pick. Last season, his numbers fell off. No fault of his own. The offense changed. The scheme changed. The way that they used him and targeted him was completely different, almost to a mind-bogglingly different level. And I blame Missouri for that. But Burden as a pro, he's going to come in and be that third receiver. Drafting him in the second round does not make me worry about Rome Odunze. It does not mean that they have a lack of faith in him. He was still a top 10 pick along with Caleb Williams. Those two guys have a great bond. Luther Burden's going to come in and make that trio of receivers with the two tight ends they have, with DeAndre Swift. It's just going to make this a very multifaceted offense, probably even a more talented one than what Ben Johnson had from a receiving weapon group standpoint than what he had in Detroit. And that's an offense that produced 7,000 yards and 70 touchdowns last year. It's scary to think how good this offense can be. They had two other second-round picks, Ozzie Trapillo, an offensive tackle out of Boston College. You see the continued investments in the offensive line. This is not a bad thing. And then on the defensive side, they add Shamar Turner, another one of those talented Texas A&M defensive linemen. We've talked about a few of those. Watch our Cincinnati Bengals video and everything like that. Shamar Turner was also in contention for being a first rounder at some point. He falls to them later in the second round. Great value. And then I want to jump ahead to round 7. Kyle Monangai. He's a running back out of Rutgers. This is that typical bowling ball style running back. Only 5'8", but 211 pounds. He's a rocked up dude. Pause. He's going to be that guy that complements DeAndre Swift. I could see him taking touches away from Roschon Johnson and maybe play more that David Montgomery style role, getting the 4th and 1, 3rd and inches type carries, getting some of that goal line work, punching in those tough yards, coming in late in games, winding clock down, protecting the leads that I think they could have. I love what they did with this draft and what they added to the team. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I love it. I think they're going to be exciting. I said it before. I think they're going to be electrifying, and I'm like you. I don't see them being the bottom feeder of this division of the North. I think it's going to be a struggle this year to see who comes out on top. I think the Lions won't get that 15 win. And the reason why, I think the Bears are going to take some of them from them. Same thing with the Vikings going 14-3. I see the Bears taking a couple of those. These things start adding up. You start winning, 1, 2 games, 3 games, 4 games. That stuff adds up. And so I think our predictions when we get into them, especially if you watch all 4 videos in the NFC North, they're all going to be very, very similar records, because these teams are going to be all very, very equal. I think this is the division to watch in the NFC. I think it's going to be a fun division, and it should be a fun year for the Bears.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about being the 32nd ranked offense last year with as much as they've invested into it, not only from a talent standpoint, but a coaching standpoint. If you told me they're top 15, I consider that a lock. Surprise me. If you tell me they're top 10, now we're starting to get there. If you told me they're top 5, okay, I'm interested. I'm willing to hear arguments on that. I don't know if they'll be there quite this year, but I could definitely see them being in that 8 to 10 range immediately. If this offense clicks the way that I think they could, it could be a dynamite type explosion for not only this offense, but multiple players on it. Defense, they haven't invested as much into it, but I don't expect them to be 27th. Even if they get to 20th, that's fine because of how well I think this offense can produce points, put them on the board. It's going to put that defense in better position. Adding guys like Grady Jarrett, adding a guy like a Shamar Turner, bringing in an edge player, bringing back, your cornerbacks that are very advantageous of those positive game scripts. It can make them be in position to play a little bit more aggressively rather than constantly being put at a disadvantage because of how poorly your offense was executing last year. All in all, I think the rising tide of this team is going to help all 3 phases of the game. So looking at a record prediction, I've got them improving from 5-12 all the way up to 10-7. Winning record by far. This isn't like a 9-8. If you told me they had 11-12 wins, I could see it. I really think they're going to improve that much. The only thing that pauses me from giving them a 12-win prediction versus 10 is we talk about how evenly matched this whole division is going to be. When you look about the Vikings, you talk about how good the Lions have been and I think can continue to be. And then, of course, the Green Bay Packers and everything that they have talent-wise. this is going to be a war of attrition across all four teams, and I could see them all finishing within a couple of games of each other. How do you feel about the division race and having them basically having the second best division in the record from my predictions?
I agree 100%. I'm, the sometimes the best defense is a good offense. We talked about it with the Cincinnati Bengals, and I think the difference between the two teams where we were kind of uh, beating up on the Bengals a little bit. I don't know that that's the right words for it, but we were kind of a little harsh on the Bengals for having such a good offense and a lackluster defense. The thing is with the Bengals, they're going to score fast. They're going to have big electric plays. With this offense, I don't you're going to have some electric plays, but I think this offense is what's going to stay out on the field. They're going to grind the game. They're going to, bring the game to them. So in that respect, their offense is a really good defense because they're going to wind the minutes off the clock. They're going to have a lot of close games that I think they're going to win because their offense is so good. So if I'm like you, if their defense is 20th or even 15th in the league, I think they're a really good team. They're going to have an exciting year, and that could push them into that 12 game win cycle or that 13 game. I don't know that I go as high as 13. I'm going to stick with you. I'm going to be in that 10 to 12 game win area for them. But again, I think all of this division is going to be about that 10 to 12 game win area. I just think that's where they're all going to line up because the division has gotten that much better and is so good. And as a football fan, I like to see that. That's the division I want to watch. Those are the games that I want to watch. Do I want to watch a 6-3 game? Absolutely not. But do I want to watch a 52 to nothing game? No, I'm not much into that either. I like good football, and I think that's what the Bears are going to bring. I think that's what this division is going to bring.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very, very closely contested. I think every game is going to matter, not only within the division, but just every game of the season, because you're going to see how good all four of these teams are going to be, who's going to ink out those crucial wins, because you can't go on a 3-game skid in this division because it's going to take you out of it. And if you tell me that they've got the 15th best defense, then I'm willing to say they are a 12-win team and they're winning this division because I think their offense is going to be that good. And I feel like they're going to be a lot more well-rounded of a team compared to a team like Cincinnati that is going to have a really good offense because they have not improved their defense enough. The Chicago Bears could have a decent defense and a very special offense. So it's going to be really interesting to see. And when you start talking about their biggest strength and biggest concern, it all comes down to that offense. Their biggest strength is that they brought in Ben Johnson and they have tried to shape this roster to match his vision for what it can be. You've seen a lot of turnover, a lot of change in one offseason, and that's going to be a good thing because what they had as far as coaching goes in previous years is not nearly the caliber of what I expect them to have under Ben Johnson now. The concern to that is you're also putting a lot of eggs in the Caleb Williams basket. Last year, like you said, he was running for his life. He was piloting this 32nd ranked offense. They did not put up 300 yards a game. It was 68 sacks or something like that they gave up. It was a crazy number. You can't expect him to be able to execute when he is pressured that much. Granted, he was a rookie. He's going to make rookie mistakes. I expect him to be better this year, but putting him in a situation where it's heavily publicized. He was talking about he didn't feel like he had coaches that were able to help him break down the film. They were just telling him, are you watching film? Are you getting better? Now he's got a coaching staff that is actually working alongside him to bring up the entire team. I'm not saying he needs to be coddled and babied, but it just goes to show you that once he has a staff that is supporting him as the starting quarterback, you can expect to see that growth out of a number 1 overall pick. And so does he take that next step? That's got to be your biggest concern. Does he live up to the hype and expectations of being that number 1 pick? And I know he gets just a lot of unnecessary flack. Oh, he paints his fingernails. Oh, he cries when he loses. He's a passionate guy, but he's also undefeated at Lambeau Stadium, and there aren't too many Bears quarterbacks that can actually say that, and he currently can. as good as they can be this year, it might be something that he's taking into year 3 and 4 is being able to say that he's got a win streak in Lambeau, and the Packers were a playoff team this year or last year, and this year could be as well. But watch out because the Bears are coming.
I agree. I think we'll see the return of the Mike Ditka era and the dominant Bears that they were. I really think Ben Johnson's going to bring that. If he shows up in the sweater vest, all the better. I got to see it.
It's game over if he's in a sweater vest.
100%. So, all right. So let's go to fantasy football. Who are you putting on your team?
If this offense is as good as what we've talked about, give me all of them. I like Caleb Williams because you want a quarterback that can run, and he does run a little bit. He's got mobility. He is looking to facilitate the offense first. But if you told me he added 500 yards on the ground and 3 scores, I'm okay with that. But just the potential, Chicago has never had a 4,000-yard passer. A lot of people thought Caleb Williams could be that guy to do it last year as a rookie. Obviously, we saw how much the offensive line hampered him from being able to do that. Remaking that offensive line, adding a Luther Burden, a Colston Loveland to the weapons that they already have, the step forward that we think Rome Odunze take. I think this is the year that he becomes a 4,000-yard passer, 30-plus touchdowns. He was already pretty good about taking care of the football from an interception standpoint. If he continues to be efficient with the ball and protects it, with as good as we think this offense can be in those sustained drives that you talk about, a lot of scoring opportunities, I think Caleb Williams is going to be a very good high floor, low ceiling maybe. But again, you look at his weapons. I want DJ Moore. I want Rome Odunze. Even give me DeAndre Swift as the pass catching back in this offense, as the number 1 back. Yes, he's going to give up some carries to a Roschon Johnson. Yes, he's going to give up some grinding work to a Kyle Monangai. But they've got to build the lead first before they can protect it. And I think that DeAndre Swift is going to be the benefactor of that. He is the Jahmyr Gibbs of this offense, a less talented version of it. I think he is going to have possibly the best year of his career since that one year that he had in Philadelphia that he looked so good. And I think that he's going to really fit well. He's already familiar with Ben Johnson. They know each other from their time in Detroit. And this is going to be an offense that you're going to want a piece of. The one position I might stay away from is the tight end position because I do think Loveland and Kmet are going to kind of cannibalize each other. But it's not nearly as bad as what I think you're going to see out of the Green Bay situation that we'll talk about in another video. This offense is going to have a lot of key contributors, and I want them on my fantasy team.
Yeah, I like Swift, especially as like I'm a RB2, maybe my flex spot. That would be a good spot for him. I'm like you. I don't know that he's going to be the highest point scoring running back in fantasy, but he's certainly not going to be the lowest either. So I like Swift. Like I said, RB2 flex spot. I think you're not going to get hurt with that if you can pick him up in round 2, especially if you pick, if it's a snake draft and let's say you pick 2 or 3 and then it snakes around and you're picking later in round 2, that would be a good pickup, a good back pickup for you. Odunze, yeah, I'm super high on him. I'm right there with you. I think he's going to score a lot of points, a lot of touchdowns, a lot of yardage. I think he will be. Him and Moore will. I know Moore is the one, and Odunze is too, but I think they're going to be kind of right there with each other.
I could see that flipping this year. Moore was definitely the 1 last year. Keenan Allen was the 2, and Rome was the 3. I could see Rome ascending to that wide receiver 1 spot, top of the depth chart, becoming Caleb Williams' favorite target, who he looks at early and often. And we've seen it already. When DJ Moore, Keenan Allen was missing games last year, Rome Odunze was having 100-yard games. He can have a multi-touchdown game. I'm not thinking that he's the second coming of Julio Jones or anything like that, but he's somebody that can have a 1,400-yard, 10-touchdown season, and it's not out of the realm of possibility. I don't even think it's that far-fetched, especially if DJ Moore were to miss some time and he really ascends to that number 1 spot on the depth chart. I think Caleb Williams is going to take that step further, and because of that, Rome Odunze is as well.
Yeah, and going back to Swift, with the improvements of the line, again, I'm gonna harp on it. I think he's gonna look better because he has a good line that will block for him and open up the holes that he needs opened that he did not have last year. We talked about Caleb Williams running for his life because they were coming in the hole. Same goes true with the running back. If you're taking the handoff and you're getting popped in the mouth as soon as you touch the ball, that doesn't look good on your stat line. So I think his year will look a lot better just because he has that protection up front.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, the running holes are going to look better. The lanes are going to be cleaner. He's always been able to have that one cut, find a crease, and go. We've seen that even going back to his days at UGA. He's always been a provision type of back. Screen passes,
Mhm.
just swings. You can line him up out wide. He can run some whip routes and stuff like that. Just get the ball in his hands. And when the team around him is better, he's going to look better as a result. I know a lot of people think that DeAndre Swift has had a disappointing career. Go back and check some of those numbers. He has actually been a lot better than what I think a lot of people expect. And Chicago kind of made that vote of confidence in him because a lot of people said, is Chicago going to be the Ashton Genty landing spot? Are they going to take a Travion Henderson? And they did not take another running back until round 7. That means that they are confident in letting DeAndre Swift be their RB1. They didn't bring in a Nick Chubb when he was out there, a free agent for a long time. They said Swift is our guy. We've got a couple guys behind him that we're comfortable with in the offense, but he's going to get all the work that he can handle, and I think it's going to be a good fit for both real life and fantasy.
Yep, I agree. Well, guys, I think this will do it for the Chicago Bears. Brad, I appreciate you joining me for this episode, and I think it was a pretty good video. Got some more coming up, so we will see you in the next one.